Most people think peace is something you earn at the end of a long journey. After you fix your problems, after you heal your past, after you finally get your life together, then you'll rest. But what if that idea is the biggest illusion keeping your mind tired every single night? What if the very thing you're chasing has been quietly waiting inside every breath you've ever taken? Tonight, I want to invite you into a different kind of journey. Not a race to become someone else, but a long, gentle walk back to the part of you that was never broken. You've probably tried to calm your mind before and felt like you failed. Maybe you've listened to guided meditations, repeated affirmations, even whispered prayers in the dark. For a few minutes, there's relief. And then the thoughts come back, louder than before. You start to believe there's something wrong with you, that your mind is too noisy, too damaged, too late to fix. But Buddhist monks have a quiet secret. You don't have to fix your mind to rest inside it. You just need to learn how to stop fighting it like an enemy and meet it like an old friend. In the next 3 hours, you're not just going to relax. You're going to walk through ancient Zen stories that have calmed restless minds for over 1,000 years. Stories about empty boats, wild tigers, broken teacups, and quiet temples hidden inside crowded cities. Each one looks simple on the surface, almost like a bedtime tale. But hidden inside them are keys, practical, human, down-to-earth keys to understanding your own thoughts and emotions. Not in theory, but in a way you can feel in your chest and use tomorrow morning. You'll notice something strange as you listen. We won't ask your mind to be quiet. We won't force your thoughts to disappear, and we won't chase some perfect state. Instead, we'll do something almost no one is taught to do. We'll make friends with what's already here. Your worries, your regrets, your fears about the future. They'll all be invited to sit down and breathe with you. Zen doesn't promise a life without storms. It shows you how to become the person who is not blown away by every wind. And that begins not one day, but in the very next breath you take. Some of the teachings you'll hear tonight are going to sound upside down at first. You'll hear that chasing happiness can make you more unhappy, that trying to control every thought can make your mind even more chaotic, that the peace you're begging the world to give you has actually been waiting for your permission the whole time. This is not about becoming passive or pretending your problems don't exist. It's about discovering a way of being that is steady even when life is not. As we move from story to story, I'll speak to you as if we were sitting in the same room. Not as a guru on a mountain, but as a friend who's also had sleepless nights and heavy thoughts. I'll share how these teachings show up in ordinary modern situations, traffic jams, messages left unread, bills on the table. You'll see that Zen is not just for temples and monks in orange robes. It's for parents who can't switch off, workers who carry the office in their heads, and hearts that are tired of pretending to be strong. If you let them, these stories will quietly take off the armor you've been wearing all day. You don't have to pay attention perfectly for this to work. You might drift in and out, catch one sentence and miss the next 10, and that's okay. Think of this as a river of wisdom you're lying beside. Even if you fall asleep, the sound keeps washing through you. Some parts will stick right away. Others will sink somewhere deeper and ripen later. Your only job is simple: to allow yourself, maybe for the first time in a long time, to stop trying so hard, to let the words, the images, and the silences between them hold you for a while. So, make yourself comfortable in whatever way actually feels good for your body. You don't have to sit perfectly still or breathe in a complicated rhythm. You can lie down, hug a pillow, keep a soft light on, or close your eyes completely. As you settle in, remember this: you are not broken for feeling tired, anxious, or overwhelmed. You are a human being whose mind has been trying to protect you the only way it knows how. Tonight, through Zen stories and Buddhist teachings, you'll finally learn how to kindly ask it to rest. Imagine this. It's late at night. Your room is dark, and the only light is that soft glow from a street lamp outside. Your body is tired, but your mind is still rowing through the events of the day. Someone said something. Someone didn't reply. Someone looked at you in a strange way. And now, instead of drifting into sleep, you're replaying everything like a movie on loop. In this first story, I want to sit beside you and take you to a quiet river, where one man learns a very strange lesson from a completely empty boat. Because the truth is, most of the enemies that keep you awake at night are not really there. Picture a man rowing his small wooden boat at sunset. The water is calm, the sky is painted in orange and gold, and for a moment he feels truly at peace. The gentle sound of the oars dipping into the river is like a lullaby. He looks around and sees the reflection of the trees, the fading light, the soft ripples spreading out behind him. In that silence, his thoughts finally start to slow down. Maybe he's thinking about his family, his work, or just enjoying that rare moment where nothing urgent needs his attention. For a few precious minutes, life feels simple again. Then he notices something in the distance. Another boat, drifting toward him. At first, it seems harmless, just one more vessel on the water. But as the moments pass, the boat keeps coming directly in his direction. He waits for it to change course. It doesn't. He feels a small irritation rising in his chest, like a spark. Why doesn't this person move? He thinks. He shouts once, trying to be polite. Hey, watch where you're going! The river carries his voice away, but the boat keeps coming, silently, stubbornly, almost as if it's trying to challenge him on purpose. As the boat gets closer, his irritation turns into anger. He shouts again, louder this time, words sharper, shoulders tense. Are you blind? Move your boat. His heart rate rises, his jaw tightens, his hands squeeze the oars. In his mind, he's no longer just a calm man on a river. He's a victim of someone else's stupidity, disrespect, or bad intention. By the time the boats finally collide, he's ready to explode, already imagining the argument, already building a whole story about the rude, careless person who dared come straight at him. His body is on the water, but his mind is in a fight. And then, something completely unexpected happens. He stands up, full of rage, ready to scream at whoever is in that other boat. But when he looks down, he realizes there is nobody there. The other boat is empty. No captain, no passenger, no enemy. Just an old abandoned boat drifting with the current, following the simple logic of water and wind. In a single instant, all his anger has nowhere to go. It's like shouting at a shadow on the wall. The situation hasn't changed, the collision still happened, but the story in his head collapses, and he's left face to face with a strange truth. The whole drama was created inside him. Now bring that image into your own day. How many times have you reacted to people as if their boat were full, when in reality it was empty? Someone doesn't respond to your message, and your mind says, "They're ignoring me." A driver cuts you off in traffic, and your mind shouts, "They did that to me." A coworker passes by without saying hello, and suddenly you're certain they don't like you anymore. You don't just see events, you instantly attach meanings to them. The event is like the boat. The meaning is like the person you imagine inside it. But what if, most of the time, there is no person there at all? Think about that message left on "seen" all day long. Your mind can write entire novels from that one notification. They don't care. They're playing games. They're disrespecting me. Maybe they're just exhausted. Maybe they're anxious. Maybe they opened it while standing in a line, got distracted, and then forgot. The reality is, you don't know. You are rowing toward an empty boat, but ego desperately wants there to be someone to blame. And then, at night, you try to sleep, but your brain is still arguing with a person who isn't even in the room, maybe not even thinking about you at all. The same thing happens in traffic. Someone drives aggressively, and in 1 second, they turn from a stranger in a car into my personal enemy for the next 10 minutes. You curse in your mind, you rehearse speeches, you imagine their personality, their whole life, from a 3-second event. Your nervous system responds as if you are under a real attack. Your muscles tense, cortisol rises, your breathing gets shallow. Then, hours later, when you finally lie down to rest, your body is still carrying the echo of that fight with an opponent you never even met. Once again, the other boat might have been empty. The ego hates emptiness. It hates the idea that things just happen. No one to blame. No one to prove wrong. No one to beat in an argument. Ego feeds on the belief that everything is personal. They did this to me. Life did this to me. The universe is against me. And the more personal everything feels, the more your mind has to protect itself, defend itself, and control everything. That constant state of defense is what keeps your brain spinning at 3 in the morning. You're not just remembering events, you're guarding yourself against imaginary attacks from boats that have already drifted away. Now, let's flip the story for a moment. Imagine you're the one in the other boat. Have you ever hurt someone without meaning to? You forgot a birthday? You spoke a little harshly because you were tired. You arrived late because you were stuck in your own problems. In your mind, the boat was empty. You were just drifting through a difficult day. But to the other person, your action felt full of intention. They thought you were cruel, selfish, or indifferent. That's the same illusion from the other side. When you realize how often your own boat is empty, it becomes easier to believe that other people's boats might be empty too. There is a deep peace that appears when you allow events to be just events. You don't need to excuse every behavior or accept everything that happens. Boundaries are still important, but you stop stabbing yourself with the story. They did this to hurt me. The next time someone says something sharp, instead of immediately creating a villain in your mind, you might think, maybe that's just an empty boat drifting through their own storm. That thought alone can reduce your emotional temperature. Your heart doesn't have to race, your breath doesn't have to quicken, and your night doesn't have to be sacrificed to a stranger's bad moment. Let me give you a practical way to use this when you're triggered. The moment you feel the anger rise, heat in your face, tight chest, fast thoughts, just mentally say to yourself, empty boat. You don't have to believe it right away, just plant the seed. Then take one slow breath in through your nose and exhale like you're gently blowing out a candle. In that brief pause, ask, what else could this mean if it's not about me? You're not denying reality. You're opening a window. This small practice can turn a whole night of replayed arguments into a few minutes of gentle reflection. I remember a man who once told me he spent an entire week not speaking to his brother because of a short, cold text message. His mind filled the silence with accusations. He doesn't respect me. He never cared. He only contacts me when he needs something. The story grew bigger every hour. At the end of the week, he finally called, ready to fight, and discovered his brother had been in the hospital with his child. In that moment, the boat disappeared. All the anger, all the rehearsed speeches, all the hurt were directed at a phantom. What really existed was a worried father and a scared family. The river hadn't been against him at all. Sometimes, the emptiest boat of all is not outside, but inside. You might spend years angry at your younger self for mistakes you made, choices you regret, words you wish you could take back. At night, when everything gets quiet, those memories sail back in and you crash into them again and again. Your mind shouts at that younger version of you as if they were a cruel stranger. But if you look closely, that person wasn't a villain. They were just an unconscious boat moved by currents of fear, ignorance, pressure, or lack of guidance. You're rowing today with wisdom that simply didn't exist back then. When you start to see your past self as an empty boat driven by forces you didn't fully understand, forgiveness becomes more than a nice idea. It becomes logical. You don't have to pretend that nothing bad happened. You just stop insisting that everything was done with full awareness and malice. You were learning. You were drifting. You made mistakes, like everyone else. And the same way you can let the other boat drift away on the river, you can let that old version of you float downstream too. Not erased, but no longer the center of tonight's storm. Notice what happens to your body when you soften your stories like this. Your shoulders drop a little, your jaw loosens, your breath becomes less sharp, more like a gentle wave than a crashing one. The river inside you starts to match the calmness of the river in the story. It doesn't mean nothing difficult ever happened. It means you stop rowing so furiously against everything, everyone, and even against yourself. You give your nervous system permission to step down from the battlefield and walk back to the shore, where the only thing that really matters now is rest. You might even laugh a little when you realize how many imaginary arguments you've had with people who weren't in the room. How many court cases you've run in your head, where you play the victim and the lawyer and the judge and the audience, all at once. How many nights you've sacrificed to winning trials that existed only in your own mind. That soft, gentle humor is healing, because it shows you that you're not broken. You're just human. Your brain is creative, dramatic, and sometimes overprotective. You can thank it for trying to defend you, and then kindly invite it to take a night off. As you lie there now, perhaps you can picture all those boats on the river of your day, some bumping into you, some drifting nearby, some passing silently in the distance. You don't have to chase them. You don't have to shout at them. You don't have to judge every movement as an attack or an insult. You can simply watch them float by, knowing that most of them are empty, moved by currents you can't see and don't control. And slowly, as more boats pass, The river becomes less crowded, the water smoother, the sky above you wider and calmer. And here's the quiet secret. This first story wants to plant in your mind. If so many of the boats are empty, maybe you don't need to spend your nights guarding the river. Maybe you can let the water do what water does, carry things along, and allow yourself to rest on its surface instead of fighting it. Because in the next story we'll explore, you'll see that it's not just the boats that trouble us, but also the cliffs of what if and what if not on both sides of the river, where fear of yesterday and fear of tomorrow try to pull you away from the only place you can actually rest. This present moment, right here, right now. Do you remember how, in the last story, we were standing by that quiet river, watching empty boats drift by? Now I want to show you the sky above that river and the cliffs on each side. On the left cliff lives what if, and on the right cliff lives if only. These two don't row boats, but they shout so loudly that they can stir up waves inside your mind. What if something goes wrong tomorrow? One side yells. If only you had done things differently, the other side replies. And between those echoes, many people spend their nights wide awake. Think of a night when you lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, while your mind ran through future disasters like a highlight reel. What if I lose my job? What if the test goes badly? What if they leave me? What if I get sick? Notice that, in most of those stories, nothing is actually happening in the room. The bed is still, the house is quiet, your body is safe, but your mind is already living inside problems that don't exist yet. It's like you packed your bags, left your own bed, and moved into a movie set built completely out of fear. Now flip the direction. Some nights, you don't travel to the future, you travel backward. If only I hadn't said that. If only I had stayed. If only I had tried harder. If only I had walked away sooner. These thoughts are not asking real questions. They are trying to rewrite a story that has already been printed and bound. It's like standing at the end of a movie, arguing with the screen, wishing the character had turned left instead of right. Deep down, you know you can't change it, but your mind keeps pressing rewind anyway. There's a Zen saying that goes, if you are depressed, you are living in the past. If you are anxious, you are living in the future. If you are at peace, you are living in the present. It doesn't mean depression and anxiety are always simple. Life is more complex than a quote on a poster. But there is a deep truth hidden there. Your mind is a time traveler. Your body is not. Your body is always here, breathing in this moment. The problem is that your thoughts keep dragging your attention to places your body cannot go. Imagine your thoughts as little children in a classroom. One child keeps shouting, "What about tomorrow?" Another keeps crying, "But yesterday." And you, your awareness, are the teacher trying to keep order. If you ignore them, they scream louder. If you believe everything they say, your classroom turns into chaos. But if you gently walk between them and say, one at a time, we're staying here, in this lesson, right now, something softens. You're not trying to silence them forever, you're simply refusing to let them run the school. Here's a simple exercise you can try the next time those cliffs start shouting. When your mind says, "What if?" answer with, "Right now." For example, "What if I fail that interview?" becomes, "Right now, I'm lying in my bed, breathing. What if they don't like me becomes, right now, my body is safe and nothing bad is happening in this room. Say it in your own words, softly, like a friend talking you down from a ledge. You're not solving tomorrow's problems. You're reminding your nervous system where it actually is. The same method works for if only. When your mind whispers, if only I had done things differently, you can answer, right now, that moment is over, but I am still here. If only I had made a better choice, becomes right now, I can make a different choice with what I have. This small shift doesn't erase regret, but it turns it into fuel instead of poison. You stop stabbing yourself with the past and start asking, what can I learn from this that actually helps me today? Think of a person who constantly checks the weather app but never steps outside. They know every forecast, every percentage of rain, every wind speed, but they never feel the warmth of the sun on their face. That's what we do when we live only in our worries. We forecast endless storms and miss the fact that, right now, there is no rain hitting our skin. The forecast might help you carry an umbrella tomorrow, but it shouldn't keep you from walking outside today. There's also something quietly powerful about noticing how often your worst fears never actually arrive. You have lived through thousands of what-ifs that never came true. Some of the problems that kept you awake 10 years ago, you don't even remember anymore. Yet tonight, the mind tries to convince you that this new fear is different, special, more dangerous. You can smile gently at that voice and think, I know you. You've been wrong many times before. I'll prepare where I can, but I won't give you my whole night. On the other hand, some difficult things actually did happen. Not every fear is imaginary. Sometimes you did lose the job. Sometimes the relationship did end. Sometimes the test did go badly. But notice something important. You are still here. The fact that you are listening to this now means that every storm you thought would destroy you didn't. It hurt. It changed you. It carved marks into your story. But it did not erase you. You walked through days you were sure you couldn't survive. That's not just pain. That's proof of strength. If you want a practical way to calm the time-traveling mind, try this simple practice before sleep. Choose 3 small things from the present day to say thank you for. Not the big, obvious ones. Start tiny. The taste of your favorite drink. A smile from a stranger. A song you liked on the radio. Say them in your mind, slowly. Thank you for this. Gratitude is like an anchor. It doesn't erase the past or guarantee the future, but it holds you in the only place life can actually touch you. This moment. You might say, but my mind just won't stop. I try to think positive, and it keeps coming back to the same worries. That's okay. The goal is not to control every thought. That would be like trying to control the direction of every cloud in the sky. The goal is to control what you do with those thoughts when they appear. You can let them pass, like clouds drifting across the horizon. Or you can build a house under each one and live there. Every time you notice a worry and gently return to your breath, you are choosing the sky instead of the cloud. Let's use a very ordinary example. Imagine you have an important conversation tomorrow. Your mind starts rehearsing it at midnight. I'll say this, then they'll say that. Then I'll respond like this. After half an hour, you've had 20 different imaginary conversations with 20 different imaginary reactions. You feel exhausted and tense. and the conversation hasn't even happened yet. The irony is that the more you rehearse, the more tired and reactive you'll be when the real moment comes. The greatest gift you could give tomorrow's version of you is a well-rested mind. The same goes for regret. Take one thing you wish you had done differently. Just one. Instead of replaying the scene again and again like a punishment, ask yourself, what did this teach me about who I want to be? Maybe it taught you to listen more, to slow down, to value your health, to choose different friends, to speak up sooner. That lesson is the treasure hidden inside the pain. Write it down if you need to. Put it on a small note by your bed. Let the lesson stay, and allow the self-blame to go. Of course, the mind will argue. But if I stop worrying, won't I be unprepared? If I stop regretting, won't I repeat the same mistakes? That's the trick. Preparation happens in action, not in endless mental rehearsal. Learning happens in reflection, not in self-torture. You can set an alarm, make a plan, apologize where needed, save money, seek help. That's preparation. You can reflect, journal, talk to someone wise. That's learning. Lying awake while your thoughts attack you does not add a single ounce of real safety to your life. As you lie here now, you can imagine those two cliffs. What if and if only, slowly drifting farther away. Their voices get softer, like echoes fading in a valley. You don't have to push them away with force. You simply keep returning to the gentle rhythm of your breathing. Inhale, I am here. Exhale, this moment is enough. Inhale, I have survived every day so far. Exhale, I don't need to live tomorrow tonight. The river of your awareness keeps flowing, and the cliffs become just part of the landscape, not your prison. And as that river grows quieter, you might start to sense something you haven't felt in a while. The simple weight of your body on the bed, the softness of the pillow, the safety of this room. You're not in yesterday, and you're not in tomorrow. You're just here, suspended between the two, in a space they cannot touch. And in the next story we'll walk into, you'll see how even the thoughts that judge you the most harshly, those loud inner critics, can become softer too, like strict teachers who, deep down, were only trying in a clumsy way to protect you. When you were a child, do you remember the first time you felt truly ashamed? Maybe you dropped a plate, said something awkward in class, or brought home a grade that made an adult frown. Long before we learn about meditation or mindfulness, we learn something else: how to point a finger at ourselves. In many people's minds, there lives a small, strict teacher, always ready with a red pen, always finding the mistake on the page. That inner critic can be so loud at night that it drowns out even the sound of your own breathing. Picture a young monk in a mountain monastery, carrying a stack of porcelain bowls. One cold morning, his hands are numb, and he trips on a stone step. The bowls crash to the ground and shatter across the courtyard. In that instant, he freezes. His heart races, his throat tightens, and inside his head, he hears a harsh voice. "You idiot! You always ruin everything." No one has spoken those words out loud, yet they ring as if shouted. The worst punishment is not what the teacher might say. It is what his own mind has already told him. Now imagine the head monk walking over, hearing the noise. The young monk expects anger, maybe even expulsion. Instead, the old teacher kneels, picks up a broken piece, and turns it in his hand like a small moon. "Interesting," he says calmly. This bowl has fulfilled its purpose. Now we sweep, and we learn to walk more slowly when the stones are icy. No lecture, no humiliation, just a simple observation wrapped in kindness. The same event, the same broken porcelain, but a very different voice. Every night, as you lie in bed replaying your day, you are standing in that courtyard with your own broken bowls, a careless word, a delayed answer, something you forgot to do. Your inner critic rushes in first, shouting its usual slogans. How could you be so stupid? You're such a failure. You never get it right. It speaks in absolutes, always, never, everything, nothing. That's how you know it's not the voice of wisdom. Wisdom rarely speaks in extremes. Shame almost always does. Here's something most people never realize. That inner critic often started as a bodyguard. It was built from the voices and expressions around you when you were small. Maybe a parent who scolded harshly, a teacher who mocked in front of others, classmates who laughed when you made a mistake. The mind, trying to keep you safe, decided, if I attack myself first, maybe others will attack me less. If I'm perfect, maybe I won't be rejected. What started as self-protection slowly turned into self-torture. Think of the inner critic as a smoke alarm that has become too sensitive. It goes off not only for real fire, but for toast that is barely warm. You end up living in a house full of noise. At work, one small error triggers a siren. In relationships, one awkward moment means I'm unlovable. At night, lying in the dark, the alarm keeps beeping about everything you did or didn't do. It's exhausting, and yet part of you believes, if I turn it off, I'll be careless. I'll become lazy. I need this voice to improve. But people don't grow well under constant attack. They grow under consistent care. Think of any coach or mentor you admire. Do they scream and insult, or do they offer clear feedback combined with respect? The most effective teachers say things like, "You can do better than this, and I'm here to help you." Not, "You're useless." Imagine if you could begin speaking to yourself that way. Not ignoring mistakes, not sugarcoating everything, but correcting yourself with the same tone you would use with a child you truly love. Here's a small practice you can try. Give your inner critic a name and a face. Maybe it's old Mr. Perfect, always adjusting his glasses and complaining. Maybe it's the drill sergeant, shouting orders. When you name it, you create space between you and the voice. Instead of, "I am a failure," you can think, "Ah, that's Mr. Perfect again, panicking because I wasn't flawless today." Even that tiny bit of distance can soften the impact. You move from being the punch bag to being the observer. Another step is to ask the critic a surprising question. What are you trying to protect me from right now? When it yells, "You sounded so stupid in that meeting," you can pause and listen underneath the insult. Maybe what it's really afraid of is, "I don't want you to be laughed at. I don't want you to lose respect." When you hear the fear behind the harshness, you can respond more wisely. "Thank you for trying to protect me. Next time, I'll prepare better. For now, we did what we could today, and it's time to rest." You can also bring your body into this conversation. Notice where the inner critic lives physically. Does your chest tighten? Does your stomach knot? Does your jaw clench? When you catch yourself replaying a scene and judging yourself, gently place a hand on that tense area. Breathe into it, and on the exhale, imagine you're letting some of the judgment leave your body. You might even whisper, I am not my mistakes. I am someone who is learning. At first it feels strange, but slowly the body begins to trust this kinder tone. Let me give you a very simple bedtime exercise. Before sleep, think of one moment in the day where you weren't at your best. Maybe you snapped at someone, procrastinated, or overate. Instead of letting the critic write the whole story, write a 3-part sentence in your mind. Yes, this happened. This is what it taught me. This is what I'll try next time. For example, yes, I raised my voice at my child. It taught me that I'm more stressed than I admit. Next time I'll step away for a breath before I respond. You're turning a whip into a teacher. There is a big difference between responsibility and self-cruelty. Responsibility says, I did this, and I'm willing to repair it. Self-cruelty says, I did this, which proves I'm worthless. The first leads to movement, apologies, better choices. The second freezes you in shame and often leads to repeating the same patterns because you feel too broken to change. When you're lying awake at night, listen carefully. Which of these two voices is speaking? One is firm but loving. The other is harsh and endless. Over time, you can start inviting another inner figure to sit beside the critic. The wise friend. If you had a friend who made the same mistake you did today, what would you say to them? Would you call them names and list every failure from the last 10 years? Or would you say, you messed up, but this doesn't erase your goodness. Let's figure out how to do better. The wise friend's voice is quieter at first, but with practice, it grows stronger. Eventually, the critic no longer dominates the room. One powerful way to feed that wise voice is through tiny acts of self-respect during the day. Drinking water when you're thirsty. Taking a short walk when your mind is crowded. Saying no to one small thing you don't have space for. You might think these actions are insignificant, but they send a message. I am someone worth taking care of. The inner critic can argue with your thoughts. It has a harder time arguing with your actions. Every respectful choice is like placing a soft cushion between you and its blows. As you do this work, the nights begin to change. The critic still tries to start its usual late-night meetings, but you don't attend every session. It calls you into the courtroom, demanding you defend yourself against every perceived flaw, and instead you reply, "Court is closed for today. We'll review what we need to tomorrow. Right now, my job is to rest so I can actually change." Little by little, your nervous system believes you. Sleep becomes less of a trial and more of a shelter. And here is a quiet secret. When the critic calms down, you actually become more trustworthy to yourself and others. Not because you become perfect, but because you become honest without being brutal. You can admit, "I was wrong," without falling into, "I am wrong as a person." That humility combined with self-respect makes room for real transformation. The people around you feel safer, too, because the storm inside you has softened. As you listen to my voice and feel the weight of your body on the bed, see if you can notice which voice has been the loudest in your life lately. Is it the critic, the wise friend, or perhaps a mixture? There is no need to push anything away. Just observe, as if you were watching clouds pass across a vast sky. And in the next story we'll explore, we'll go deeper into that sky itself, into the quiet language of your body, which often tells the truth long before your thoughts catch up. In one of the old Zen stories, a teacher asks a student, "Where do you live?" The student answers with his address. The teacher shakes his head. "No," he says gently. You live in your body. It sounds obvious, almost too simple. But think about how your days really go. Your thoughts live in emails, in conversations, in worries about tomorrow. Your attention lives in the glowing screen in your hand. Meanwhile, your body quietly carries you through every moment like a loyal animal that never leaves your side. When you can't sleep, your body is often the one shouting while your mind tries to negotiate. The mind says, "We need to rest," but the chest tightens, the heart races, the shoulders burn from a day of tension. It's like trying to put a child to bed after ignoring them all afternoon. They are full of stories, emotions, and questions that never got a chance to be heard. The body does the same. It speaks in aches and restlessness when it hasn't been allowed to speak in gentle whispers during the day. Imagine a craftsman who uses the same tool for decades without ever oiling it, cleaning it, or putting it down. At first, the tool works fine. Then it becomes stiff, rusty, difficult to handle. The craftsman begins to blame the tool. "What's wrong with you? Why won't you cut straight?" But the problem is not the tool. It's the lack of care. In the same way, we expect our bodies to deliver calm nights after days of neglect. We sit for hours, breathe shallowly, ignore hunger and fatigue, then feel surprised when, at night, the body refuses to relax. There was once a monk who worked in the monastery kitchen. All day he chopped vegetables, carried heavy pots, and moved quickly to feed everyone. For years he ignored a dull ache in his back. "I don't have time to stretch," he told himself. "There are too many tasks." At night, he began waking up every few hours, unable to find a comfortable position. His mind blamed stress, his prayers grew more desperate, but he never listened to the simple message his body had been sending. "I need attention. I need kindness. I need you to move differently." One evening, an older monk noticed him wincing as he lifted a pot. "Your back and your sleep are arguing with each other," the elder said with a half smile. "Your body is calling for help, and your mind is answering with more thinking." He showed the younger monk a slow, deliberate way of breathing and stretching before bed. Nothing magical, nothing complicated. Bending gently, rolling the shoulders, massaging the lower back with mindful hands. "When you treat the body like a friend," the elder said, "the night stops feeling like a punishment." You don't need to become a yoga master to understand this. Think of one ordinary day when your body tried to speak to you and you ignored it. Maybe your eyes burned from staring at a screen, but you scrolled for an extra hour. Maybe your stomach tightened in a difficult conversation, but you swallowed your words instead of setting a boundary. Maybe your jaw clenched while you forced a smile. Each ignored signal is like a message left unread. At night, all those unread messages gather and demand to be opened. Here's a small experiment you can try tomorrow, long before bedtime. Set a quiet reminder on your phone every few hours that simply asks, "Where is my body right now?" When it goes off, pause for just 30 seconds. Notice your posture, your breath, your jaw, your hands. Are your shoulders by your ears? Is your brow furrowed? Are you holding your breath without realizing it? You don't need to fix everything at once. Just allow one gentle adjustment. A deeper breath, a softer jaw, a small stretch. It is like sending a tiny apology to your body. Another practice is to treat your evening routine as if you were putting a child to sleep. not a machine into standby mode. When we put children to bed, we dim the lights, speak softly, maybe tell a story, or play calm music. We don't usually hand them a bright screen, pour caffeine into their cup, and then say, "Now, sleep." Yet we do this to ourselves. We expect the nervous system to switch from alert to peaceful in one command. Instead, you could experiment with a simple ritual: warm water on your face, slower movements, maybe even placing a hand over your heart for a few breaths. You might lower the volume of the world little by little. Quieter lights, quieter sounds, quieter tasks. Over time, your body learns that these signals mean we are approaching rest. Just as a child relaxes when the same bedtime story is told again and again, your nervous system relaxes when it recognizes a familiar path into sleep. A lot of hidden anxiety lives in the belly. In many traditions, this area is seen as a second brain, a center of intuition and emotion. When you feel butterflies or a knot in your stomach, that's your body processing unspoken feelings. Before bed, you can lie on your back and rest one hand on your chest, one on your belly. Feel which hand rises more with each breath. If only the top hand moves, invite the breath gently downwards, as if you were slowly inflating a balloon under your lower hand. This kind of breathing tells the body, we're safe enough to relax now. Sometimes, the body remembers danger even when the danger has passed. Maybe you went through an illness, a stressful job, or a difficult relationship where you were constantly on guard. Even after things change, the body keeps waiting for the next blow. That's why you might find yourself lying awake, heart racing, for no obvious reason. There is no tiger in the room, but your body still hears rustling in the grass. Instead of arguing with it, there's nothing wrong. Stop overreacting. You can acknowledge it. Of course you're tense. You went through a lot. We're safe here. Now. You might find it helpful to think of your bed as a temple and your nightly routine as a small ceremony. That doesn't mean incense and chanting. Unless you enjoy that, it can be as simple as choosing to slow down. When you fold your blanket, do it mindfully. When you place your head on the pillow, notice the contact. When you turn off the light, let that act be symbolic. Now I am leaving the world of doing and entering the world of being. It may sound poetic, but the nervous system responds to these signals more than you realize. There is also a link between unspoken truth and restless bodies. Have you ever noticed how, after withholding something important, a feeling, an opinion, a confession, your body feels heavier at night? It rolls, twists, aches, as if carrying a secret. I'm not saying you must resolve every conflict before sleep. Life doesn't always cooperate. But even quietly admitting to yourself, there is something I haven't said, and it's weighing on me, can ease the tension. The body relaxes a little when the heart stops pretending. If you want a very practical tool, try a body scan as you lie in bed. Start at your toes and move upwards slowly, bringing awareness to each part of you. When you notice tension, instead of commanding it to relax, say inwardly, "Thank you for working so hard for me today." Then invite it to let go. You can rest now. Most people are stunned by how much tightness they carry without knowing it. This gentle inventory is not about judging your body. It's about finally seeing the faithful worker who has been laboring in the background all day. Over time, this kind of friendship with the body changes the way you move through your waking hours too. You may catch yourself unclenching your jaw in the middle of a tense email, or placing your feet more firmly on the ground before a difficult phone call. These are tiny acts on the outside, but inside they tell your body, "I am here, I'm listening." The more heard your body feels during the day, the less it needs to shout at night. As you listen now, notice if your own body is giving you any signals. Maybe your shoulders drop a little, or your breath deepens without effort. Maybe you feel warmth in your hands, or a slight heaviness in your eyelids. These are not just side effects of a nice story. They are messages. Your body is saying, "Finally, someone is paying attention." And as we move into the next story, we'll look at another powerful source of nighttime restlessness: the way we carry other people's emotions as if they were our own, and how learning healthy compassion can free both heart and body. There is a quiet kind of exhaustion that doesn't show up on medical tests. Your body is tired, but the real fatigue is somewhere deeper, like a sponge that has soaked up too many storms. You go through the day listening to other people's worries, frustrations, and fears, and by the time you lie down at night, your mind feels like a crowded room. It's not just your own voice in there anymore. It's your partner, your children, your parents, your friends, your boss, all talking at once in the dark. Imagine a woman in a small village who is known as the good listener. Everyone comes to her with their troubles. The farmer tells her about his failing crops. The mother cries about her sick child. The young man confesses his hopelessness. She nods. She comforts. She offers tea and kind words. At sunset, the village grows quiet, but her mind does not. She lies awake replaying every story, as if her heart were a storage room for other people's pain. No one ever taught her how to close the door. In one ancient story, a monk carries an injured traveler on his back up a steep hill. The path is long, and both of them are sweating by the time they reach the monastery gate. The traveler thanks him and walks away. The next day, the monk is still thinking about how heavy the man was, still feeling angry that no one helped him, still replaying the effort in his mind. Another monk looks at him and says, "You put him down yesterday, but you are still carrying him in your head today." That's what happens when we absorb everything and rarely let anything go. You might notice this in small ways. After a difficult phone call, your heart keeps racing. After listening to a friend complain for an hour, you feel strangely irritated for the rest of the day. After watching the news, your body tightens as if the whole world's suffering were your personal responsibility. Then, when night comes, your mind does not return to your own life. It returns to theirs. You go to bed, but you are still at that hospital, in that office, in that argument, trying to fix what isn't yours to fix. It's important to realize that this habit often comes from a beautiful place, a sensitive heart. Maybe you grew up in a home where you had to sense everyone's mood just to feel safe. You learned to read the air like a weather expert. If Dad was angry, you felt it in the way the door closed. If Mom was sad, you tasted it in the silence at dinner. Your nervous system became a finely tuned antenna, always scanning for emotional storms. As an adult, that same sensitivity helps you be compassionate, but it also makes you absorb more than your system can handle. Think of yourself as a house with open windows. Compassion is the breeze that passes through. Emotional overattachment is when you remove the doors and forget where the walls are. When someone walks in with muddy shoes, they don't just leave footprints in the hallway. They move into your bedroom, your kitchen, your dreams. True compassion means you can open the door, offer a chair, listen deeply, but also gently guide them out again when the visit is over. So your inner home doesn't become a permanent waiting room for other people's storms. Here's a simple picture that might help. Imagine you are standing by a river and people are struggling in the water. You can extend your hand, throw a rope, shout instructions. What you cannot do is jump in for everyone all day without ever stepping back onto the shore. Otherwise, you drown along with them. Real wisdom is learning when to lean in and when to lean back. Not out of coldness, but because your strength is only useful if it is still there tomorrow. At night, one of the reasons sleep is so difficult is that your mind is still in rescue mode. You replay conversations, wondering if you gave the right advice. You imagine future disasters for your loved ones as if worrying were a secret form of protection. Your body stays on alert because emotionally, you never clock out. It's like working a double shift without rest. Of course, your system refuses to relax. The first step is to notice when you are doing this. I'm rehearsing their problems again, as if my thinking alone could save them. There is a gentle practice you can try before bed. Sit or lie quietly and bring to mind the faces of the people you are worried about. For each one, you can say inwardly, "I care about you. I wish you peace. But your path is your own. And tonight, I will rest." As you breathe out, imagine placing them softly into the hands of something greater than you. A wise universe, a loving mystery, whatever image feels right. You are not abandoning them. You are acknowledging that you were never meant to be their only lifeline. Sometimes we carry others' emotions because we are afraid of facing our own. It is easier to focus on your friend's divorce, your sister's financial mess, your colleague's stress, than to sit with your own loneliness or fear. Helping becomes a way to avoid yourself, but your body knows the difference. It senses that underneath all the support you're offering, there are unspoken feelings waiting. This is why, after a day of caring for everyone else, you may crash into bed and suddenly feel an emptiness that has no clear name. A helpful question to ask yourself is, whose emotion is this? When you feel a wave of anxiety or sadness, pause for a moment. Did this feeling start after a certain conversation, message, or news story? Does it feel strangely disconnected from your actual circumstances right now? If so, you may be carrying someone else's weather. You're standing under their rain cloud without an umbrella. Gently naming it, "This sadness might not be fully mine," already gives you a little more space. You can also create small, emotional boundaries during the day. For example, after listening to someone's heavy story, you can take 1 minute alone to breathe and imagine brushing invisible dust off your shoulders. Some people like to wash their hands slowly, picturing the water carrying away what isn't theirs to hold. Others take a short walk, even just to the bathroom and back, to reset their nervous system. These tiny rituals teach your body that it is allowed to release. You're saying, "I heard them, I cared, and now I'm allowed to come back to myself." Another useful practice is to limit how much emotional weight you lift at once. Just as you wouldn't try to carry 5 overloaded bags of groceries in one trip, you don't need to hold everyone's secrets and sorrows at the same time. If you've had a very intense conversation today, maybe you give yourself permission to say no or not now to the next one. You can be honest. "I really want to listen to you fully. but I'm a bit drained today. Can we talk tomorrow? This is not selfishness. It is maintenance of your inner strength. As you lie in bed tonight, you might picture yourself standing on a shoreline at dusk. Behind you is your own small, warm house with a light in the window. In your hands, you hold a handful of small stones, each one representing something you picked up from others today. A story, a worry, a piece of anger, a fear. One by one, you can drop these stones into the water, watching the ripples spread. This one belongs to my friend. This one to my parent. This one to my colleague. You are still you, still caring, but a little lighter. Over time, learning this balance between compassion and overcarrying changes the way your nights feel. Instead of being a storage room for everyone's pain, your mind becomes a place where love can pass through without getting stuck. You listen, you support, you empathize, but when the day ends, you gently close the door and return to your own breath, your own heartbeat, your own life. And in the next part of our journey, we'll explore another invisible thief of sleep, the way unmade decisions and postponed choices pile up in your mind, turning your pillow into a conference table long after midnight. There is a strange thing the mind does when the lights go out. Your body lies down, your day is officially finished, but your brain calls a meeting. Suddenly, the pillow becomes a boardroom table, and every unmade decision you've been postponing takes a seat. Money, relationships, work, health. That message you still haven't answered. They all raise their hands at once. You wanted to rest, but now you're the exhausted CEO of a company called My Life Inc., running an emergency meeting at midnight. No wonder sleep doesn't show up. The room is already too full. Imagine an old merchant in a bustling market centuries ago. His stall is overflowing with goods, customers calling his name, coins clinking everywhere. He's good at business, but terrible at deciding. Should he expand to the next town? Should he marry his daughter to that wealthy trader's son? Should he buy more fabric or more grain? He thinks, postpones, asks for one more day. But each day, those undecided questions pile up like unpaid bills. At night, the market closes. The streets are silent. But inside his skull, the bargaining never stops. You live in a different century, but the pattern is the same. Your market is your inbox, your to-do list, your family group chat, your bank app, your health exams, your dreams for the future. During the day, you can distract yourself with noise and tasks. But when everything quiets down, the open loops start glowing. Should I leave this job? Should I stay in this relationship? Should I move cities? These questions don't politely wait in a queue. They shout over one another like impatient customers, and the more tired you are, the more their voices seem urgent and dramatic. There is a psychological truth hidden here. The brain hates unfinished things. A decision without a direction, yes or no, stay or go, behaves like an app running silently in the background, draining your battery. It doesn't seem heavy in the moment, so you say, "I'll think about this later." But later has a favorite time slot. Exactly when you're trying to fall asleep. That's when your mind finally has enough silence to bring all those background apps to the front. Not to torture you, but because it's trying, clumsily, to protect you. In an old Zen story, a student asks his master why his mind feels so heavy. The master points to a table where many small stones are scattered. Each one of these stones, he says, is a choice you refuse to make. You don't want to lose any of them, so you keep them all. But a path only appears when your feet actually move in some direction. The student realizes that his mind is that table, crowded with tiny rocks he's afraid to put down. Think about your own stones for a moment. Some are big life decisions: marriage, career, moving, children, study. Others are surprisingly small, but still heavy because of the way you carry them. That dentist appointment you keep postponing, the closet you never sort, the bill you need to renegotiate, the friend you've been meaning to call. It's not just the size of the decision that matters, it's the number of them. Even pebbles can break a back if there are enough of them in the same backpack. One practical step you can take, surprisingly powerful, is to do a decision dump before bed. Take a notebook, not your phone, and write down every decision that's floating in your head, big or small. You're not forced to decide everything at once. You're just moving them out of your mind onto paper. Next to each one, you can note a next tiny step instead of final answer. For example, instead of change career, write tomorrow. Spend 20 minutes researching possible paths. Your mind relaxes when it knows there is a container and a next action, not just a giant vague cloud. There's another layer hiding under indecision: fear of regret. You're not just choosing between option A and option B. You're also trying to choose a future version of yourself who never makes mistakes. That's impossible, of course. But try telling that to a brain that thinks perfection is the only safe place to stand. So it runs simulations. If I choose this, I might lose that. If I say yes there, I'll disappoint someone here. It's like watching 100 trailers of movies you never actually watch. Exhausting, dramatic, and strangely addictive. Here's a gentle truth: not deciding is also a decision. Staying in a job you hate while you think is still choosing that job today. Remaining in a relationship that drains you until you're sure is still living that relationship right now. The mind often pretends indecision is neutral, but your life continues to move while you stand at the crossroads. Zen teaches that the path appears when you take a step, not when you finish planning the entire map. Even a small move, asking a question, booking a trial session, visiting a new place, breaks the paralysis. To practice this, you can set a compassionate time limit for certain decisions. For smaller things, like signing up for a course or canceling a subscription, you might give yourself 48 hours. For bigger things, like moving cities or changing careers, you might give yourself 30 or 60 days. During that period, you gather information, talk to wise people, pray or meditate, feel your body's reactions. But when the time is up, you commit to a direction, knowing no path is risk-free. Your nervous system learns that it is capable of deciding and surviving the results. From a spiritual perspective, indecision is sometimes a disguised lack of trust. Trust in your own capacity to adapt, and trust that life is bigger than any single choice. If you believe there is only one perfect path, and that all others lead to disaster, you'll freeze at every crossroads. But if you accept that every path offers lessons, growth, and unexpected gifts, the pressure changes. It becomes less about choosing correctly and more about walking consciously. Sleep comes easier when you're not trying to guarantee a flawless future every night before bed. There's a story of a traveler who reaches a fork in the road at dusk. Both paths disappear into the trees, and he can't see the full distance of either. He sits there for hours, terrified of choosing the wrong one, until finally the moon rises. By then he's exhausted, hungry, and cold, too weak to walk even if he wanted to. The road didn't trap him. His fear of choosing did. Sometimes, the suffering we call confusion is just fear wearing a more intellectual costume. What would happen if, just for tonight, you gave yourself permission not to solve everything, to treat your life like a book you don't have to finish in one sitting? You can mark the page, close the cover, and trust that you'll return to it with fresher eyes tomorrow. Some people find it helpful to say aloud before sleep, "Future me will think better than exhausted me." It sounds simple, almost childlike, but it sends a clear signal to your nervous system. The meeting is adjourned. The boardroom is closing. The pillow can go back to being a pillow. You might also experiment with a small decision ritual during the day, not at night. Pick one undecided thing that's been lingering for weeks and move it forward by one step. Call the clinic. Send the email. Fill out the form. Ask the uncomfortable question. This doesn't magically fix your entire life, but it changes your identity bit by bit. Instead of seeing yourself as the one who never decides, you become the one who moves, even when unsure. That identity travels with you into the night like a calmer companion. Over time, as you practice choosing with kindness instead of perfectionism, something shifts inside. You no longer need to rehearse every possible future in bed just to feel safe. You begin to trust your ability to correct course if needed, to apologize if you're wrong, to start again if something fails. The mind stops demanding absolute certainty as the price of rest. You still care about your choices, of course, but they no longer need to be solved at Tadurtwai and on, under the covers. They can be handled in the daylight, step by step, where they belong. And when you lay your head down, the crossroads are still there. But they're quiet now, like roads seen from an airplane window. You know they'll be waiting in the morning, and that's okay. Tonight, the only decision you truly need to make is to allow your body to sink, your breath to slow, your thoughts to loosen their grip. Tomorrow's paths can wait for tomorrow's feet, because there is something deeper than decisions that actually carries you through life. And that deeper current is what we'll gently touch in the next part of our journey, where we explore the illusion of control and the surprising peace that appears when you stop trying to manage the entire universe from your pillow. There's a quiet superstition almost everyone carries into bed without noticing. It's the belief that if you think hard enough, worry deeply enough, rehearse every scenario perfectly enough, you'll somehow keep bad things from happening. So you lie there, tense under the blanket, replaying conversations, predicting disasters, planning heroic responses. Your body is horizontal, but your mind is standing at the control panel of the universe, frantically pushing buttons. Of course, nothing out there actually changes. Only your nervous system pays the price. Imagine an old ship captain crossing a stormy sea. He has maps, a compass, years of experience, but he doesn't control the wind or the waves. Still, one night, terrified by a brewing storm, he climbs the mast and starts screaming at the clouds, as if yelling louder would calm the ocean. The crew below watches in confusion. They know effort has limits. The captain's job is to steer, not to rule the sky. At night, Most of us become that captain on the mast. Control is a beautiful illusion because it looks so close to responsibility. Being responsible means doing what's truly in your hands. Paying bills, showing up, apologizing when needed. Trying to control means demanding guarantees from life before you allow yourself to relax. If I worry enough, my kids will be safe. If I plan enough, nothing will go wrong. If I think enough, I'll never be surprised. You can almost hear the nervous system whisper, "Just give me total power, and I promise you peace." But peace is exactly what this deal never delivers. You've probably noticed that most of your nighttime worries are about things you can't act on at 2 a.m. You can't have that difficult conversation right now. You can't change the test result while you're under the covers. You can't solve the economy from your pillow, even if your mind thinks you might be the first person in history to manage it. So you end up in the worst possible spot. Maximum effort, zero actual influence. It's like pressing the accelerator while the car is in neutral. Lots of noise, no movement. There is an old Zen image that says the ego is like a man riding in a cart, convinced that the dust behind him is being created by his whip. He lashes harder, thinking he's controlling the dust, but the dust is just the natural result of movement. You do something similar when you believe your worry is keeping bad things away. You think, if I stop thinking about this, something terrible will happen. But life's dust, change, uncertainty, surprise, comes with the journey, whip or no whip. The effort doesn't control the outcome, it just exhausts the rider. One practical way to test this illusion is to separate your concerns into two lists. On one side, write things I can act on within 24 hours. On the other, write things I cannot control directly. You'll quickly see how much of your mental energy goes into the second column. Every item in that second list is storm and wind and waves, real, but not steerable. Once you see this clearly on paper, you're no longer hypnotized by the idea that worry equals action. The trick, of course, is not to swing to the opposite extreme and become reckless or careless. Zen doesn't say, "Do nothing, life will sort it out." It says, "Do what you can, fully, then stop pretending that what you can't do is still your job." Responsible action is like planting a seed, watering it, and clearing weeds. Control obsession is like yanking the plant upwards every hour to check if the roots are growing. Guess which one kills the seed faster? Spoiler: the plant doesn't appreciate being micromanaged. You can practice letting go in very small, concrete ways. For example, choose one situation you're worried about. Maybe a bill, a conflict, a project. Ask yourself, what is one small, real action I can take tomorrow? Write down that action, schedule it if needed, and then say out loud, "I have done what can be done for today." It will feel strange at first, like putting down a heavy bag you've carried for years. But your body will recognize the relief long before your mind trusts it. There's a gentle exercise I often recommend before sleep: the 2 baskets ritual. Imagine you have 2 baskets at the side of your bed. In one, you place everything that is yours to do: calls, decisions, habits, boundaries. In the other, you place everything that is not yours: other people's reactions, tomorrow's weather, your boss's moods, the past, the timing of outcomes. See yourself, in your mind's eye, physically handing those things over to God, to the universe, to life. to mystery. However you name it. You're not discarding them. You're returning them to where they actually belong. Some people resist this and say, "But if I don't control it, who will?" That question reveals how deep the illusion goes. There has never been a single day where you controlled the entire web of causes around you. You didn't control who you were born to, what decade you live in, which country, which genes, which economic conditions. And yet, here you are, breathing, learning, growing, loved by some people more than you know. Something has been carrying you all along that was never your personal willpower. Think about times in your life when things worked out in a way you didn't design. The job you found by accident. The person you met by chance. The opportunity that appeared right after a disappointment closed a door you were sure you needed. If you look honestly, you'll see that some of your most important moments came from outside your plans. That doesn't mean planning is useless. It just proves there is more in play than your mental spreadsheet. Letting go of control is not passive. It's a very active internal decision. It sounds like this: I will show up fully for my part and release the rest. When you practice this, your nervous system no longer has to run at maximum voltage all the time. You're not abandoning responsibility. You're right-sizing it. You become like a skilled sailor who knows when to adjust the sails and when to bow before the wind. Wisdom replaces panic at the helm. At night, this attitude can be surprisingly physical. You can lie down, take a slow breath, and with every exhale, imagine your hands unclenching from a steering wheel. You might even literally unclench your fists, finger by finger. You can tell yourself, for the next few hours, the world can spin without my supervision. It sounds almost childish, but that's exactly why it works. The mind understands images better than arguments. You're teaching your body that it's allowed to rest even when life is imperfect. Of course, the mind will protest, but what if something happens while I'm sleeping? I like to answer that with a playful question. Has anything important not happened because you were awake worrying? When you see that your hypervigilance never really prevented life from being life, something softens. You realize that sleep isn't abandonment. It's cooperation with the way human bodies were designed. Even the most devoted caregiver needs to close their eyes. You're not the exception to that rule. You're the proof of it. There is a deeper secret here. When you loosen your grip on false control, real influence actually increases. You're less reactive, more creative, more able to respond wisely instead of impulsively. A rested mind sees options a tired mind can't even imagine. When you stop burning energy trying to control the uncontrollable, you suddenly have power available for what truly matters. From the outside, it might look like you're doing less. On the inside, every action begins to carry more weight, more clarity, more impact. As your relationship with control changes, your nights begin to feel different. The same problems may still exist, but they're not jammed into the hours meant for healing. You start to experience a strange new sensation, being aware that things are unresolved and yet feeling calm enough to rest. That's not irresponsibility. That's maturity. And from that maturity, something else begins to awaken. An awareness not just of mind and decisions, but of the body that's been absorbing the impact of all this tension. And that is exactly where we'll quietly step next, into the mysterious way your body remembers what your mind tries to forget. There's a funny thing about the body. It never graduated from your mind's school of excuses. Your thoughts can say, "I'm fine, it's nothing, I just need to think more about it." But your shoulders are up by your ears like you're trying to wear them as earrings. Your jaw is tight. Your breath is shallow. Your stomach feels like it swallowed a fist. The mind insists, "I'm in control," while the body quietly files a complaint. It remembers every storm you tried to handle alone. It just stores it in muscles instead of sentences. Think back to a time when you went through something heavy. A breakup, a scare with money, a health worry. Notice how even after the situation cooled down, your body stayed on high alert. You jump at small noises, wake up in the middle of the night, clench your teeth in your sleep. It's like your body didn't get the memo that the war is over. Zen would say, your nervous system is still sitting in yesterday's battlefield, even though today's sky is clear. And until you go there and invite it back, it stays stuck in yesterday. Imagine a village that had a fire years ago. The flames are gone, the houses rebuilt, the streets quiet again. But one old man still runs every time he smells smoke from a harmless kitchen. His body doesn't trust the calm. That old man lives inside you too. The body remembers through reactions, not through logic. One of the simplest ways to befriend that old man is to start listening to your body as if it were a person with something important to say, not as a machine to drag around, not as a problem to fix, but as a friend that's been protecting you the only way it knows how. You can literally ask it, "Where are you holding this?" Most people, when they pause, notice one or two zones immediately: neck, chest, stomach, back. Those are like temples where old worries and uncried tears sit, waiting for you to finally visit. A practical exercise you can try tonight is a simple body scan, but done with kindness, not as a cold technique. Lying down, start with your feet and slowly move attention upward, as if you were shining a warm lantern from toes to head. At each part, ankles, calves, knees, ask, "Is there tension here?" And if there is, don't fight it. Just breathe into that spot as if you're saying, "I see you. You don't have to carry this alone anymore." You're not forcing relaxation. You're giving the body permission to drop what it no longer needs. You might be surprised by what happens when you simply let your belly soften. We walk around sucking in our stomachs to look composed, while the nervous system is begging for space to breathe. Try this. Exhale, and let your abdomen expand like a sleepy cat stretching. Notice how strange and vulnerable it feels at first, like you've just taken off invisible armor. That's exactly what's happening. The body's walls are lowering a little, trusting that maybe, just maybe, it's allowed to rest now. Think of all the times your body warned you long before your mind admitted there was a problem. The job that made you nauseous on Sunday night. The relationship that gave you migraines that mysteriously disappeared when it ended. The random back pain that showed up every time you said yes when you meant no. Your body isn't just a vehicle, it's a brutally honest diary you can't edit. Zen practice includes learning to read that diary without waiting for it to burst into flames. If you want something very concrete, choose one signal your body gives when stress rises. Maybe it's a knot in your throat, a buzzing in your chest, or heat in your face. Make an agreement with yourself. Whenever this shows up, I'll pause for 3 breaths, no matter what. 3 slow inhales and long exhales, like you're gently emptying a glass of water. You're teaching your body that it doesn't have to scream to be heard. A whisper is enough. There's also huge power in small, almost silly-looking rituals before bed. A few slow shoulder rolls, a gentle stretch of the neck, opening and closing your hands like you're wringing out tension. You can even stand beside the bed and imagine brushing off the day with your hands, from your head down to your feet, as if dusting mud from your clothes after a long journey. The brain might roll its eyes, but the body understands this language very well. Sometimes, what the body needs most is something embarrassingly simple: warmth and weight, a heavier blanket, a warm shower before bed, a hot water bottle on the stomach or lower back. These are signals from the outside world saying, "You're safe enough to soften." It's the same instinct that calms a crying baby when it's held close. You're not weak for needing that. You're human for needing that. You may notice that when your body finally begins to relax, emotions surface that you didn't expect. Tears come out of nowhere. A memory you got over years ago suddenly feels fresh again. This isn't you regressing. It's you finally being safe enough to feel what you once had to freeze. The nervous system unlocks the vault when it believes you can handle what's inside. And you can, especially if you don't do it alone in your head, but together with your breath and your body. If this feels overwhelming, remember you don't have to dive into everything at once. You can do this like dipping your toes into a lake, not jumping into icy water. Tonight, maybe you just choose one small area, a tight jaw, a stiff neck, and give it 5 minutes of awareness, not trying to fix it, just sitting with it like you'd sit with a friend who needs company. Tomorrow, maybe you add another spot. Bit by bit, the body learns that bedtime means comfort, not interrogation. You might also notice that certain positions feel safer than others. Some people feel more relaxed on their side, others on their back with a pillow under the knees. It's not trivial. It's your animal body choosing how to feel least threatened. Let it choose. Think of it like giving your loyal guard dog a soft bed in the corner instead of making it sleep standing at the door. A guard that knows it can rest will protect you better when it really matters. Another powerful, simple practice is to synchronize your breath with a calming image. For example, as you inhale, imagine a warm light filling your chest. As you exhale, imagine that same light gently washing down through your arms and legs, carrying tension out through your hands and feet. Don't worry about doing it perfectly. Your nervous system isn't grading you. It just needs a clear message repeated softly. We're safe enough right now to soften. Over time, your body starts believing that sentence more than your old habits of fear. It's worth saying clearly. Your body is not your enemy, even if it has panicked, frozen, or overreacted in the past. Every strange symptom was a clumsy attempt to protect you. Put your hand over your heart for a moment, feel the beat, and acknowledge that. You've survived things your younger self never imagined. Your body helped you through those nights. Now it's your turn to help your body rest. As this relationship with your body heals, something deeper shifts that you might not expect. You begin to sense a kind of quiet you that is not the tension, not the palpitations, not the racing thoughts. A witness that can see all of that without being crushed by it. That quiet presence has been there since you were a child, watching everything. And once you taste even a little of that stillness, the whole game of stress and overthinking starts to look different. Because then, naturally, The next question appears. If I am not my tension and not my thoughts, who am I underneath all that noise? There's a moment late at night when the world quiets down and the old movie starts again. You know the one. Scenes of things you said, things you didn't say, mistakes you made years ago. Your chest tightens, your stomach drops, and suddenly it feels like you're on trial in your own mind. No judge, no jury, just you replaying everything and handing out the harshest sentence possible. Shame and guilt love this hour. They know the mind is tired and defenses are weak. But this same hour can also become the holiest time to finally rewrite that script. Think of your past like a bookshelf full of chapters. Most people keep the worst chapters right at eye level, reading them over and over. I messed up here. I hurt someone there. I failed at that. Meanwhile, other shelves are full of moments of courage, kindness, and survival you barely revisit. It's not that the painful chapters aren't real. They're very real. But they were never meant to become the only story you read about yourself. Shame is different from honest regret. Regret says, I did something wrong. Shame whispers, I am something wrong. One points at an action that can be understood, repaired, or learned from. The other attacks your identity like rust slowly eating through metal. If you listen closely, you'll notice shame never offers a way forward, only a life sentence. Zen invites you to gently separate those two voices and stop letting shame speak as the narrator. Imagine a child who spilled a cup of juice on the floor. A healthy parent says, "You made a mess. Let's clean it together, and maybe be more careful next time." A cruel parent says, "You're useless. You always ruin everything." Now realize, many nights, you've been playing both roles in your own head. You make a human mistake, and then treat yourself as if you're fundamentally broken. No wonder it's so hard to relax. You're scared of your own inner parent. A very practical exercise you can try is called switching the chair. Picture your current self sitting in front of your younger self at the age when the mistake happened. Really see their face, their fear, their confusion, their loneliness. Ask yourself honestly, if I saw this on a movie screen, would I hate this person or feel compassion? Most of the time, something soft cracks open, and you realize, I've been far harsher than life itself. That crack is where healing begins to breathe. Sometimes guilt is actually hiding a deeper fear. Fear of not being loved if people knew the whole truth. Fear that one wrong turn canceled your right to be happy. Fear that you have to pay forever to prove you're sorry. But that's not how life works. And it's not how wisdom works. Even the strictest spiritual traditions are built on the idea of transformation, not permanent exile. Think of all the people you admire who talk openly about their past mistakes. Former addicts, people who cheated, lied, hurt others, and then changed. We call their stories inspiring, powerful, redemptive. We see their growth, not just their fall. Now, notice the double standard. You believe in their ability to change, but not in your own. It's like standing outside a door labeled forgiveness and insisting everyone except you can enter. Here's a very simple, very uncomfortable question. Have you ever truly apologized to yourself? Not in a dramatic way, not as self-pity, but as an honest recognition. I made choices back then. With the level of awareness I had, I see the damage, And I'm committed to living differently now. You don't erase the past by doing that, but you stop stabbing the wound every night. You move from punishment into responsibility. Try writing a letter one of these nights, not to the person you hurt, but to the version of you who hurt them. Write as the wiser self you are now, speaking to that confused, impulsive, fearful you from back then. Explain what you understand today that you didn't know then. Acknowledge the harm, yes, but also the context, the pain, the loneliness you were carrying. You'll be surprised how much pressure eases just by telling the full story. The mind is cruel when it only allows one angle of the truth. Zen doesn't ask you to pretend everything was okay. It doesn't sugarcoat your responsibility. It simply refuses the lie that you are forever defined by your worst moment. Think of a forest after a fire. The burned trees remain, but so do new green shoots pushing through ash. If you stare only at the charred trunks, you'll miss the quiet miracle happening at their feet. Your life is exactly like that in more ways than you realize. When shame comes at night, it often brings a particular phrase. You should have known better. But is that really true? If you truly had the inner tools, the maturity, the information, the healing you have now, would you have acted the same way? Most people answer, of course not. And that's the point. Growth means you know better now, not that you knew better then. Punishing the old you for not having future wisdom is a game you can never win. One powerful way to break shame's spell is to turn it into service. Ask yourself, because I went through this, who can I protect or guide? Someone younger, someone in a similar situation, someone making the same blind turn you once made. Your past doesn't disappear, but it can become a lantern instead of a chain. You may not be able to go back and change the scene, but you can change the way that scene is used in your story. From secret dungeon to teaching tool. There's also a spiritual angle here, even if you're not religious. Every tradition, in its own language, says something like, you are more than your errors. Some call it soul. Some call it Buddha nature. Some just call it consciousness. Whatever name you prefer, it points to a part of you that was present before your first mistake and will be present after your last one. That part is not impressed by your shame. It's patiently waiting for you to look up. Once you do, the whole view changes. A simple nightly ritual can help. Before bed, place one hand on your heart and one on your belly. Say slowly, even if you don't fully believe it yet, I am allowed to heal. I am allowed to grow. I am allowed to rest. Not as a spell, but as a reminder to a system that's been living in permanent punishment mode. At first, it will feel cheesy, awkward, maybe even fake. That's okay. New truths often feel fake because old lies have been repeated for so long. Repeat it anyway. The body and mind learn through repetition. You are not the only one lying awake thinking, if people knew everything, they'd run. More people than you can imagine feel like frauds carrying secret files. But here's the twist. What you think disqualifies you is often what makes you deeply human to others. Not the polished parts, but the cracks where your learning came through. If you dare, one day, to tell your story from a place of responsibility and compassion, someone else will finally feel less alone. And that, by itself, redeems a lot. As these nights slowly become less about self-punishment and more about honest reflection, something beautiful starts to happen. Sleep comes a little earlier, not because you've forgotten the past, but because you're no longer fighting it alone in the dark. You begin to sense that your story is still being written, that no chapter has the right to claim it's the last one. And when that awareness settles in, a new question appears quietly at the edge of your thoughts. If I am no longer defined by my worst scenes, then how do I want to show up with others from now on? That question leads straight into the next step of this journey. There's another kind of weight that keeps people awake at night. Not just what you did, but what others did to you. Broken promises, harsh words, betrayals that still sting years later. You might tell yourself you've moved on, but certain names still tighten your jaw. And if someone mentions forgiveness, a part of you says, almost defensively, you have no idea what they did. Tonight, I want to walk with you into that territory very gently, because that's where a different kind of freedom is hiding. Think of resentment like carrying around a backpack full of rocks that don't even belong to you. At first, the weight feels justified, almost righteous, like proof that you were wronged. But step by step, year by year, it exhausts you far more than the person who hurt you. They may be living their life, scrolling their phone, eating dinner, barely thinking about you. Meanwhile, your body tightens every time a memory or a song or a smell brings their face back. It's like drinking poison and waiting for the other person to get sick. Let's clear something important right away. Forgiveness is not saying, "It was okay," when it clearly wasn't. It's not erasing the facts, pretending you weren't hurt, or inviting the person back into your life unprotected. Forgiveness is simply deciding, with trembling but firm hands, to stop letting that wound control your future. It's choosing your peace over the need to constantly replay the crime scene. You're not freeing them first, you're freeing yourself. Imagine a villager in an old story, carrying a burning stone in their hand. Someone threw it at them once, years ago, and it hurt badly. Instead of dropping it, they picked it up and kept walking, repeating, "Look what they did to me." Their pain was real, but the ongoing burn was now being maintained by their own grip. The day they finally opened their hand, the scar remained, but the fire stopped. Forgiveness is that simple and that difficult. Loosening your fingers around the stone. Many people hold on to anger because, deep down, it feels safer than vulnerability. If I stay angry, they think, I won't feel small or fooled or abandoned again. Rage becomes a kind of armor, heavy but familiar, like a shield you never put down. The problem is, you can't hug anyone properly while holding that shield. You can't rest, can't breathe deeply, can't let new things in without suspicion. The armor that once protected you slowly becomes your prison. If you want something concrete to do, start with a quiet little inventory. Not a huge dramatic ceremony, just a simple list that you never have to show anyone. Write down the names or situations that still bring a physical reaction in your body. Notice where you feel it: throat, chest, stomach, hands, and simply admit, this still lives in me. No judgment, no lecture, just honest observation. You can't heal what you refuse to admit is still bleeding. Then, when you have the energy, you can try a more advanced move, one that feels very uncomfortable at first. Ask yourself, what might have been happening inside this person the day they hurt me? Not to excuse them, but to see the full picture instead of the single frame of impact. Maybe they were repeating what was done to them, acting out of fear, emptiness, or ignorance. Every wound has a family tree, and sometimes seeing the roots makes the branches less terrifying. You still deserved better, but now you understand the storm a little more. I once heard an older man say he spent 40 years hating his father. In his 20s, that hatred felt powerful, like rebellion against a childhood of neglect. In his 40s, it felt heavy, like dragging a chain he'd almost gotten used to. One day, he realized his father had been dead for years, yet still controlled his mood daily. That realization hit him harder than any punishment he could have imagined. He said, "I didn't forgive him because he deserved it. I forgave him because I deserved a life." Sometimes people confuse forgiveness with reconciliation, and that keeps them stuck. You can forgive someone in your heart and still never see them again. You can wish them healing while keeping a very firm, healthy distance. Forgiveness happens inside your inner world. Reconciliation involves rebuilding real-world trust, and trust is built with actions over time, not with apologies alone. You're allowed to free your heart without reopening the door. A simple exercise you can try, even lying in bed, is the letter you'll never send. Picture the person sitting across from you and say everything you never got to say. Name the hurt clearly, without minimizing it. "You did this, and it made me feel like that." Then add one more part most people skip. "Here's what I'm choosing to do with this pain now." Maybe you decide to turn it into healthier boundaries, deeper self-respect, more empathy for others. The point is, the story no longer stops at what they did. It continues with what you decide. Forgiveness is also physical, not just mental. Notice how your shoulders inch up when you think of certain people, how your jaw tightens on their name. Next time that happens, try pairing the memory with a deep, slow exhale instead of another angry thought. Breathe in, feel the tension. Breathe out. Imagine the grip loosening 1%. You don't have to let go all at once. Most people don't. But 1% every night eventually empties even the fullest backpack. Let's be honest, there's also that tiny part of you that enjoys imagining their downfall. The fantasy where they see you winning, looking amazing, finally realizing what they lost. There's nothing wrong with that little movie playing sometimes. It's part of how the ego comforts itself. Just don't let that become the only script your mind is allowed to run. At some point, real peace will feel better than imaginary revenge. You'll notice it the day you realize you went hours without thinking about them at all. Here's a secret most people don't talk about. The way you forgive others is tied to the way you forgive yourself. If you're brutally unforgiving with your own mistakes, you'll be harsh with theirs too. If you start to treat your own past with more wisdom and tenderness, something softens around other people's errors. You still keep your standards, but the need to keep everyone on trial fades a little. You move from being a lifelong prosecutor to a wiser kind of judge who also remembers being human. As resentment loosens, something unexpected begins to show up in the empty space. New friendships feel less like potential threats and more like possible gardens. You're not scanning every gesture for signs they'll become just like the others. Your nervous system slowly learns that not everyone arrives to repeat the same story. You give people a chance to be new characters, not just fresh actors in an old script. That shift alone changes the way life feels in your chest. Tonight, forgiveness doesn't have to mean finishing the whole journey. It might simply mean admitting, I'm tired of carrying this, even if I don't know how to drop it yet. It might mean offering one tiny sentence into the dark. I'm open to healing this when I'm ready. You don't rush a wound. You create the conditions where it can finally close. And naming your desire to be free is one of the strongest medicines you can take. The universe tends to answer people who are honest about what they can't keep holding forever. As you start to put down these old weights, another question begins to rise quietly behind them. If your past and other people's choices no longer have full control, what guides you now? What inner compass do you follow when anger and resentment no longer provide direction? That's where a deeper kind of trust comes in. Not in other people's perfection, but in your ability to respond. Trust in your own growing wisdom, in the calm that's slowly replacing the old storms. And that trust opens the door to the next step of this journey, where we talk about how to finally feel safe enough to truly rest. There is a kind of noise that never shows up on a sound meter, but you feel it all the time. It's the mental background hum of unfinished tasks, old conversations, news, notifications, fears about tomorrow. Even when the house is quiet, your head sounds like a crowded train station at rush hour. You lie down to sleep, and suddenly, every thought that was too busy to visit you during the day shows up at once. It's not that you don't want peace. It's that you've forgotten how silence actually feels. Tonight, I want to help you remember the taste of real inner quiet, the kind that doesn't depend on the world behaving. Think of your mind like a big ancient temple sitting in the middle of a noisy modern city. Outside, traffic, voices, sirens, endless movement. Inside, there is a courtyard where a single candle still burns, no matter what happens out there. Most people live pressed against the temple gate, reacting to every sound on the street. They rarely walk all the way in to visit that candle. Inner silence isn't about turning off the city. It's about finally stepping into the courtyard. Here's the first surprise. Silence is not the total absence of thought. If you wait for your mind to become a blank screen, you'll wait a lifetime and just get more frustrated. Silence is more like the sky, and your thoughts are the clouds passing through. Sometimes the sky is crowded, sometimes almost empty, but the sky itself doesn't panic. When you practice silence, you're not fighting clouds, you're learning to rest as the sky. Thoughts will still come, but they stop feeling like emergencies. One simple way to begin is to choose a tiny sound to be your anchor. It could be an actual cricket outside your window, the soft hum of a fan, or even your own breathing. Close your eyes and act as if you're a scientist studying that sound for the very first time. Notice volume, rhythm, texture, where it seems to come from in space. Each time your mind wanders, you gently walk it back to that sound without scolding yourself. You're not trying to win, you're just training your attention to come home. You'll notice very quickly that your mind hates this at first. It will throw up anything it can to get you to stop. This is boring. This isn't working. Check your phone. That's not a sign you're failing. It's a sign you're finally seeing how restless the mind really is. Before, the noise was there anyway, but it ran in the background like a hidden app draining your battery. Now, you've opened the settings and can actually see what's consuming all your energy. Awareness is the first step toward any kind of freedom. If you want to make this practice practical, Tie it to something you already do every day. For example, every time you drink water, turn it into a 20-second silence ritual. Feel the weight of the glass, the coolness in your hand, the texture of the water in your mouth. For those 20 seconds, you give your nervous system a tiny vacation from the chaos. Do that 10 times a day, and you've already built a few minutes of real presence into your routine. Small islands of silence eventually start to connect into a whole continent. There's another powerful doorway into inner quiet: your senses. Most of the time, your senses are half open, like windows with dusty curtains barely letting light through. You see, but you don't really see. You hear, but you don't really listen. Try this experiment tomorrow. For 1 full minute, choose one sense and turn it up to max. Look at something ordinary as if you were an alien seeing it for the first time. That intensity of attention naturally pushes out a lot of mental noise. Inner silence doesn't mean you become dull or passive. In fact, the quieter your inner world becomes, the more clearly you notice what actually matters. Opportunities stand out. Red flags are easier to spot. You respond to people instead of just reacting to them. It's the difference between driving in heavy rain with fogged-up windows and suddenly turning on the defogger. The road was there the whole time. Now you can finally see it. Sometimes, the biggest obstacles to silence are emotional, not mental. Old fears, grief, or shame use noise as camouflage, like children making a racket so no one asks what's wrong. When you turn down the volume, those feelings finally have space to step forward. That moment can feel scary, like, if I get quiet, all the stuff I've avoided will swallow me. But here's the truth. It's not coming to destroy you. It's coming to be seen and released. Silence isn't an empty room. It's a safe room where your heart can finally tell the truth. If that happens, don't rush. Place a hand on your chest, feel your heartbeat, and imagine you're sitting beside a close friend. Instead of trying to fix the feeling, just name it softly. This is fear. This is sadness. This is anger. Notice how, when you name a feeling without judging it, the intensity drops just a notch. You're showing your nervous system that it's possible to feel something without drowning in it. That is inner silence in action, a calm witness in the middle of emotional weather. Let's talk about the digital side of this for a second. Many people say, "I can't quiet my mind," but they sleep with their phone within arm's reach and every app screaming for attention. It's like trying to meditate in a nightclub with the speakers turned up to maximum. You don't have to throw your phone in the river, but you can renegotiate the relationship. Simple moves like charging it in another room or setting "Do Not Disturb" at night are acts of self-respect. You're telling your brain you deserve a few hours a day without being on call for the whole planet. Another beautiful way to cultivate silence is through nature, even in small doses. You don't need a magical retreat center in the mountains. A tree on your street can be a Zen teacher. Stand near it for a few breaths and actually study it. The texture of the bark, the way the leaves move, the shadows they cast. Trees are masters of stillness and movement at the same time. Their roots are completely anchored, but their branches dance with every breeze. Spend time with that energy, and your nervous system starts to copy it without you trying. You might notice, as inner silence grows, that everyday things become strangely more beautiful. The sound of cutlery in the kitchen, the rhythm of your footsteps, the way light falls across your floor. These details were always there. You were just too busy fighting the noise to notice. Now they become like tiny bells, reminding you to come back to the present moment. The ordinary world starts to feel less like a waiting room and more like the main event. Silence doesn't remove life. It lets you taste it. Of course, there will be days when everything feels too loud no matter what you do. Your thoughts race, your body is tense, and even breathing exercises feel irritating. On those days, the practice is not to create silence, but to reduce resistance by just 10%. You might say, "Okay, my mind is noisy today. That's what today is, and that's okay." That small acceptance is itself a form of quiet in the middle of chaos. It's the difference between being in a storm and screaming at the sky the whole time. Over time, something subtle but profound happens. Silence stops being an activity you do and becomes a place you know how to return to. Like a familiar room in a house where you've rearranged the furniture until it feels just right. You might be in the middle of a conversation, a busy day, or a stressful moment, and feel a little doorway inside. You pause, take one conscious breath, and step through it for a second or two. Those tiny visits, multiplied over weeks and months, change who you are from the inside out. And once you've tasted this kind of inner quiet, you start to see something even more surprising. The silence itself begins to speak, not in words, but in intuitions, gut feelings, and sudden clarity. You realize that when the surface finally calms, deeper wisdom can rise, like fish you never knew were in that lake. Decisions feel a bit less like coin flips and more like listening to a quiet, trustworthy guide. That guide was always there, but it refuses to shout over constant noise. The more you learn to honor silence, the more that guidance will become available for the rest of your life. And that leads us straight into another question that might already be forming inside you. If silence can reveal so much wisdom, how do you tell the difference between that quiet inner guidance and the old fearful voices wearing a disguise? How do you trust what arises in stillness without getting lost in fantasy or self-sabotage? Those are the questions we'll walk into next, with the same calm, step by step. For now, just know this. You are already closer to real inner silence than you think. You proved it simply by listening this far. Imagine a craftsman at a workbench, carving wood into something precise and beautiful. His tools are sharp, his hands steady. But what really matters isn't the knife or the wood. It's where his attention is. If his mind is half on his phone, half on an argument from last week, the cut will wobble. Life is like that bench. No matter how good your tools are, everything depends on where you place your focus. The Zen masters used archery as a way to train this kind of focus. They weren't obsessed with hitting targets to show off in competitions. For them, the bow, the arrow, and the target were just mirrors reflecting the state of their mind. If the mind was scattered, tense, or trying too hard, the arrow would tell the truth. When the mind was settled and whole, the shot became effortless, not because the world changed, but because they did. You've probably tasted this state at least once without realizing it. Maybe you were driving and suddenly noticed you'd done 20 kilometers without consciously thinking about every turn. Or you were cooking, drawing, gaming, editing a video, and for a few minutes, you forgot time existed. You weren't planning, worrying, or replaying old scenes. There was just you and the thing in front of you, moving together. That quiet concentration is a doorway to a very different way of living. The problem is, most of us try to reach that state by squeezing ourselves. We clench our jaw, tighten our shoulders, and think, focus, focus, focus. But that kind of focus is like aiming a bow with your whole body shaking. You might hit the target occasionally, but it's exhausting and fragile. Zen points to another way: soft focus, calm and sharp at the same time, like the gaze of someone watching waves roll in without trying to control the ocean. One trick to feel this difference is to pay attention to your body before you start something important. Notice your jaw, your shoulders, your hands. Are you already bracing for failure, criticism, or comparison? If so, pause for 10 seconds and deliberately relax everything by 10%. Not total Zen monk mode, just 10%. That tiny shift often changes the whole quality of your focus. Think of a camera lens hunting for clarity. When it's slightly out of focus, everything feels fuzzy, like you're always one step behind life. When the lens clicks into place, nothing in the external scene changed. Only the quality of seeing did. Inner focus works the same way. Your job, your family, your problems might still be there, but your relationship to each of them becomes cleaner, more direct. Most of the time, we shoot our arrows with 3 noisy companions: fear, hurry, and comparison. Fear whispers, "If you miss, you're a failure." Hurry says, "Just get this done. Who cares about depth?" Comparison adds, "Look, so-and-so is doing it better than you anyway." And then we wonder why our results feel crooked and unsatisfying. The arrow never really had a chance to fly straight. A very practical exercise is what I like to call the one-task bow. Choose one small task today and decide, for the next 10 minutes, this is my entire universe. No multitasking, no toggling between apps, no sneaky notifications. It could be washing dishes, editing a paragraph, or folding laundry. The content doesn't matter. The quality of attention does. You're teaching your nervous system what it feels like to truly commit to one shot at a time. You'll probably discover something uncomfortable. Being fully present can feel strangely vulnerable. Without distractions, there's nowhere to hide from your doubts or insecurities. You might hear thoughts like, "What if this still isn't good enough, even when I try?" That's exactly why many people prefer to stay 50% distracted. It gives them an excuse. If it fails, I can always say I wasn't really trying. Real focus removes that safety net. And that's scary, but this is also where real confidence begins. Not the loud and showy confidence that needs constant approval. I mean quiet confidence, the kind that comes from knowing you did show up fully. You might not control the outcome, but you know the effort was whole, not half-hearted. That inner certainty is worth more than any external praise. It's like hitting the target inside yourself. Whether or not the arrow hits the one on the wall. Let's bring this into relationships for a moment. Have you ever noticed how rare true attention is in conversations? Most people listen just enough to respond, not enough to really hear. They're composing their next sentence while you're still speaking. When you give someone undivided presence, even for a few minutes, they feel it instantly. That, too, is a form of mastery. Being fully with another person, not just near them. You can even turn your own inner dialogue into a practice ground. The next time you catch yourself spiraling, Overthinking, catastrophizing, rehearsing arguments, pause. Ask yourself, if my mind were a bow right now, how tight is the string? Then, deliberately loosen it. Take 3 slow breaths and narrow your focus down to just one thing, your next small, honest action. Not your whole life story, just the very next arrow you can release. There's also a playful side to this. Life gives you tiny, everyday archery lessons all the time. Trying to park in a tight space, chopping an onion without crying too much, getting the timing right in a game combo. Each of these moments can be a chance to practice smooth, relaxed precision. You don't have to be serious to be focused. Some masters are laughing even while they shoot straight. And yes, you'll miss a lot. You'll say the wrong thing, forget what you were doing, slip back into multitasking, lose your temper. The point isn't to become some flawless robot of concentration. The point is to notice your misses with curiosity instead of shame. Every missed shot carries information, not a verdict. If you listen, it quietly teaches you how to aim better next time. Over time, you might realize something surprising. What you once called discipline starts to feel more like devotion. You're no longer forcing yourself to focus just to get results. You're drawn to it because being fully present simply feels better than being scattered. The act itself becomes rewarding, not just the outcome. That's when mastery starts to appear almost naturally, like fruit on a tree you've been watering for months. And once you understand this, the world around you looks a little different. Obstacles begin to feel less like enemies and more like training grounds. Each difficulty becomes another chance to practice focusing your mind instead of letting it explode in every direction. In that way, challenges actually help you become a better archer in your own life. Which leads us straight into the next question. What do you do when the obstacle is so big you can't move it at all? That's where our next topic will quietly be waiting for you. Imagine a road through a small mountain village. The kind of road people, carts, and animals have used for generations. One night, after a storm, a gigantic boulder tumbles down from the cliff and lands right in the middle of that road. By morning, everyone is standing around it, arms crossed, voices raised, complaining about how impossible it is. They push, they pull, they shout orders at each other, and the stone doesn't move a single centimeter. Every person goes home that night with the same complaint. If only that stone wasn't there, my life would be so much easier. And for a while, the entire village organizes itself around the story of that stone. Eventually, they call a Zen master from a nearby monastery, certain he must know some secret technique. He arrives slowly, walking with a staff, listening more than speaking, which already irritates some of the villagers. He walks around the stone, taps it once with his staff, and then asks a question nobody thought to ask: why must the stone be moved? People laugh, thinking he's joking, but he's completely serious. He listens to all the reasons. It's blocking the old road. It's in the way. It's always been clear before. Then he says calmly, if we cannot move the stone, we can change the road. So instead of another day of useless pushing, he has them clear a new path around the rock. They cut back some brush, move a few smaller stones, level the ground with simple tools. Within a short time, carts and wagons are passing smoothly again, just on a slightly different curve than before. Children start climbing the big stone, turning it into a playground. Elders sit in its shade, using it as a meeting spot. The obstacle becomes a landmark, part of the village's identity instead of its curse. The point of the story isn't give up and go around everything. It's that some things in life really are heavy stones. They won't move no matter how angry, stubborn, or spiritual we get. A diagnosis that won't go away. A limitation in your body. An event in your past. Someone else's free will. You can scream at them. You can push for years. You can wear out your back and your hope. Or you can pause, like that old master, and ask a quieter, more powerful question. Maybe the work here isn't to move this. Maybe the work is to move me. Think of how many times you've told yourself, I'll finally be at peace when this changes. When I earn this amount, when they finally apologize, when my body works like it used to. We place all our inner freedom on the far side of a rock that may never move. It's not that effort is bad. Sometimes effort is necessary and beautiful. But there's a huge difference between pushing what can be pushed and throwing your whole life against what simply won't. One leads to growth, the other leads to exhaustion. There are really three kinds of stones in life. Some are small enough to move if we're honest and consistent. A habit, a schedule, a skill we can learn. Some can't be moved but can be worked around, like the villager's new path. Different from what we imagined, but still functional. And some are so central they become part of our landscape, like aging, loss, or certain truths about who we are. Trying to treat every stone like the first kind is how people burn out. Wisdom is learning to sort them, not with cold logic, but with humble honesty. Take a very human example. Caring for an aging parent who will not suddenly become young, easy, and independent again. You can spend years secretly wishing they would go back to how they were, resenting every new medical appointment. That's pushing the stone. Or you can accept that this phase is the new landscape and ask, what path can I build around this? Maybe that means sharing care with siblings, hiring a few hours of help, or simplifying other areas of life. The stone stays, but your relationship with it shifts from battle to design. The same applies inside your own mind. Maybe you live with anxiety, trauma, or a tendency to overthink. You might dream of waking up one day with a clean, empty head and never feeling triggered again. That fantasy is you trying to dynamite the boulder out of existence. A more realistic, compassionate path is to build routines, therapy, practices, and community around that sensitivity. Your mind becomes less a battlefield, more a terrain you've learned to navigate. When you see yourself only as the victim of heavy stones, your story becomes very small. I could have been happy if not for this. But when you see the stone as part of your training, the narrative changes completely. Think of any hero story you love. There is always a massive obstacle that cannot simply be removed. The journey is about how the main character is reshaped by walking with it, not magically erasing it. You are not exempt from that pattern. You're living your own version of it right now. Even in art and design, people eventually realized that imperfections carry a strange beauty. Cracks in pottery are filled with gold and become part of the charm. Weathered wood, faded fabrics, old buildings. They tell a story of time instead of pretending to be new. Our lives are like that. The heavy stones leave marks, detours, scars. What if those are less design failures and more the unique signature of your path. Here's something practical you can do tonight if you feel up to it. Take a sheet of paper and draw 3 columns. Can move, can work around, must learn to live with. List your current problems and place each one where it truly belongs, not where your fear wants it to be. You might be surprised by how many things land in can work around once you stop demanding perfection. Then pick just one item and ask, what's a tiny path I could start building around this? Not a life overhaul, just a single small curve in the road. Of course, there will be resistance inside you. Part of your mind loves to complain. It has a whole identity built on, "Look how unfair this is." That voice worries that if you stop fighting the stone, you're letting someone off the hook or wasting your potential. But acceptance isn't the same as approval. And it isn't laziness. It's simply dropping the fantasy version of reality so you can actually work with the real one. You can't redesign a house while pretending it's a different building. There's also grief woven into this process, and it's important not to skip that. Sometimes accepting a stone means acknowledging, this dream won't happen the way I imagined. That hurts. You're allowed to cry, rage, and feel that loss in your chest. But after the tears, there's often a subtle spaciousness, like air finally entering a room that's been shut for years. Into that space, new possibilities start to whisper. Different, smaller, maybe, but real. And reality, however imperfect, is the only place joy can actually touch you. You may also notice that once you stop obsessing over that one unmovable stone, you suddenly have energy for other things. The book you wanted to write, the friendship you've been neglecting, the walk you never take because, what's the point? It's strange how much life gets locked up in our refusal to accept one stubborn fact. When that refusal relaxes, even a little, it's like opening a dam. Not a flood of miracles, but a gentle flow of normal, human options, which, honestly, is where most real change happens anyway. The villagers in our story could have stood there for years, building religions and politics around how unfair that stone was. Instead, they allowed one old man with a walking stick to completely reframe the situation. They didn't get the road they wanted back, but they got a road they could actually use. Days went by, then years, and children grew up thinking the curve around the rock was just how the road had always been. The disaster became normal, then invisible, then quietly useful. You have stones in your life that could follow that same arc if you let them. So the real invitation isn't, stop trying to change anything. It's, stop trying to change what cannot be changed, so you have strength left to shape what can. If you can move the stone, beautiful. Bring your tools and your friends and push. If you can't, ask what new path it's forcing you to see, and what new kind of person you might become by walking it. At some point, you may even look back and realize that particular obstacle is the very thing that gave your story depth. And that realization opens the door to one last mystery. Because there's something even stranger than an obstacle that won't move. It's the way we travel all over the place. In books, in ideas, in plans, in fantasies. Looking for a perfect life with no stones at all. We climb inner mountains hoping that at the top, there will finally be no more mess. And yet, the wisest teachers keep pointing to something much closer, quieter, almost embarrassingly simple. What if the sacred mountain you've been trying to reach has actually been under your feet this entire time? That's the last journey I want to walk with you next. Imagine a young seeker who's tired down to his bones. He's read every sacred book he can get his hands on, watched every lecture, tried every technique. Yet, when he lies awake at night, his mind still races, his heart still aches with the same old questions. One day he hears about a legendary master on a distant sacred mountain who has the final answer. So he decides, that's it. That's where the real peace must be. He packs his bag, leaves his home, and begins the long climb, convinced the summit will finally fix everything. The path is steep, full of rocks, roots, and unexpected turns. Sometimes he slips in the mud. Sometimes he stops just to catch his breath and mutter, "Why is this so hard?" But between the frustrations, something else keeps showing up. There's a breeze that cools his face, birdsong that cuts through his thoughts, a shaft of light through the trees. He notices them for a second, then quickly dismisses them. Nice, but the real thing is up there. In his mind, the journey is just a waiting room for the miracle at the top. After days of climbing, he finally reaches the hut of the old master. There's no golden statue, no glowing aura, just a man brewing tea in a small, simple room. The seeker pours out his story. Years of searching, dozens of teachers, hundreds of techniques, and still no peace. Master, I want you to tell me the ultimate truth, the final key, the thing that ends this search. The old man listens quietly, then asks a surprisingly ordinary question. Did you notice the river you crossed on the way up? The seeker frowns, confused by the simplicity. Yes, but what does a river have to do with enlightenment? The master smiles as if he's heard this 1,000 times. Tell me, when you crossed that river, were you thinking of your past mistakes? Your future worries? The seeker thinks back. For a brief moment, the cold water, the slippery stones, the sound of the current, that was all there was. No, he admits slowly. For a few moments, there was only crossing. The master nods gently. In those moments, what you've been chasing for years was already happening. The seeker feels something crack open, not in the sky, but inside his own chest. We're so used to believing that truth lives somewhere else that we stop trusting what happens right under our feet. We imagine peace as a special state, with special lights, special visions, and a voice telling us, "Now you've made it." Meanwhile, the quietest, most ordinary moments of our day keep offering us simple, grounded presence. The feeling of hot water in the shower, the weight of your body in a chair, the sound of rain on the window. But we treat those as background noise while we wait for the real thing. It's like standing in the ocean complaining that you're thirsty for water. This doesn't mean all your reading and practice were useless, just like the seeker needed to climb the mountain to discover nothing was missing. Sometimes we need to exhaust the fantasy. We kneel at the feet of success, relationships, spirituality, achievement, hoping one of them will finally hush the noise inside. After enough cycles of, "I got what I wanted and I'm still restless," something important softens. We become less interested in chasing another upgrade to our life and more interested in meeting the one we already have. That shift is where real practice begins, instead of just spiritual tourism. Think about how often your mind says, "I'll relax when I finish this project, lose this weight, Get out of this situation. Change city. Change job. Change partner. We build a sacred mountain out of conditions, a place where everything will be just right, and finally we'll breathe. But every time we reach one imaginary summit, a new one appears on the horizon. The rules change, the goalposts move, the mind says, "Okay, but now you need this too." The mountain is not out there. It's the endless ladder of just one more thing inside your head. The master on the mountain doesn't hand the seeker a secret mantra. He hands him his own experience back. He basically says, "The thing you're looking for is not hidden in my cave. It's hidden in how you're looking. Because if you insist it must be rare, dramatic, and far away, you'll walk past it 1,000 times a day. You'll hear silence in your room and call it nothing important. You'll feel a moment of genuine joy and dismiss it as not deep enough. You'll taste simple contentment and immediately look for a higher level." There's a kind of spiritual addiction that looks very noble from the outside. People read every book, fly to every retreat, repeat, "I'm just searching for truth," with a tired little smile. On a deeper level, they're terrified of actually stopping and checking what's here right now. Stopping means meeting their grief, their anger, their boredom, their unmet needs, not just their higher self. So it feels safer to keep climbing, keep chasing, keep saying, "I'm not ready yet. I need one more practice." The tragedy is, they die on the mountain of preparation, never standing still long enough to feel the ground. You don't have to throw away all your tools to step off that treadmill. Meditation, prayer, therapy, breathwork, all of that can be beautiful, but as doors, not destinations. Instead of asking, "Will this fix me forever?" you can ask, "Does this help me show up for this moment more honestly?" If the answer is yes, you keep it. If the answer is no, you set it down without guilt. Instead, pick one very ordinary thing to fully receive: the feeling of the sheet on your skin, the sound of a fan, your breath. Let your attention rest there the way you'd listen to someone you love talk without trying to fix them. You'll notice your thoughts still come and go. That's fine. You're not trying to win a contest. You're just allowing yourself to be right here, instead of on the next imaginary rung of the ladder. The goal is no longer a perfect, permanent state. The goal becomes intimacy with reality, changing and imperfect as it is. That shift alone already starts to loosen the knot in your chest. Here's something simple you can test tonight, without waiting for any mountaintop. Before sleep, don't try to achieve peace or clear your mind. That's just another project. If you've spent years seeking, there's also a quiet grief for all the time I wasted. Be gentle with that voice. It did the best it knew how. The climb wasn't meaningless. It shaped your questions, humbled your ego, and taught you what doesn't satisfy. That's valuable information, even if it came packaged as frustration. Sometimes we need all those false doors to really recognize the real one. Not the shining gate in the distance, but the plain wooden door you've been walking past every day. The sacred mountain story is not saying, "Stay exactly as you are and never grow." It's saying, "Stop postponing your life until you qualify as enlightened." Growth still happens. You'll soften, learn, fall, stand up, apologize, change habits, heal old wounds. But all of that now happens inside the recognition that you're already standing on the only ground there is. This moment. You're not climbing toward your life. You're living it, at full volume, even when you don't like the current chapter. And that realization flips the question from, how do I get there, to, how can I inhabit here more honestly? If you look back on your own story, you'll see small sacred mountains everywhere, moments where you thought, if I just get this, everything changes, and then found you were still you afterwards. Those realizations can feel depressing at first, like the universe broke a promise. But underneath that disappointment is a strange freedom. You're no longer hypnotized by over there. You begin to suspect that the real treasure might be the way you walk, not the point you're walking toward. That suspicion is the first crack of dawn on the horizon of your search. And maybe that's the most important thing I can leave echoing inside you. Not another technique, not a new spiritual checklist, but a different kind of question. Not, when will I finally arrive? But, what am I refusing to meet in this exact breath? Because the seekers who eventually smile like that old mountain master aren't the ones who found a magic shortcut. They're the ones who stopped running away from the ordinary, sat down in the middle of it, and listened. And once you taste that, even for a moment, the entire journey starts to look very different. When you first pressed play, you might have been hoping for one thing: to finally feel a little lighter inside your own mind. Now that you've walked through these Zen stories and Buddhist teachings, notice what's different. Not out there, but in here. Maybe your thoughts are still there, but they feel softer, less like enemies, and more like weather passing through a wide sky. Maybe you've realized you don't have to wait for the perfect life to start living with more peace. The question now is simple and powerful. What are you going to do with this understanding when the video ends? You don't need to change everything tomorrow morning. Start with one small, concrete thing you can actually do. Maybe it's catching yourself before shooting the second arrow of overthinking and self-criticism. Maybe it's remembering the empty boat the next time someone cuts you off in traffic. Maybe it's savoring one strawberry moment during the day. A cup of coffee, a hug, a ray of sunlight, with full attention. Which of these feels most real and doable for you right now? Ask yourself honestly, which story hit you the hardest tonight? Was it the monk between the tigers, the farmer and his maybe, the teacup already broken, or the samurai at the gate of hell and heaven? That story is a mirror. It's showing you exactly where your heart is working, struggling, or ready to grow. What situation in your life does it secretly describe? If you were brave enough to apply that one teaching this week, what would you stop doing? And what would you finally start? I want to challenge you, gently but firmly. Do you really want to live the next years of your life being dragged by the same patterns that exhaust you today? Or are you willing to experiment with a new way of being? One where you respond instead of react, observe instead of explode, breathe instead of drown. You don't need to become a monk or move to a temple. You just need to start treating your inner world with the same seriousness you give to your job, your bills, or your phone. So, what is one promise you're willing to make to yourself after this video ends? Your interaction doesn't end when the last story fades out. Use the comments as your practice ground. Which teaching did you recognize in your own life? What's one situation you'll handle differently this week because of what you heard tonight? When you write it, you're not just engaging with the video. You're declaring to your own mind, I'm done living on autopilot. And if you felt held, understood, or calmed in any way tonight, don't let this be a one-time visit. Hit subscribe and turn on the notifications so you don't have to go searching for peace when your mind gets loud again. Let new videos come to you the way a bell rings in a temple, gently reminding you to slow down, breathe, and remember what you've learned. Think of this channel as your quiet corner in the middle of a noisy world, a place you can keep returning to whenever you forget what you already know. Your mind will try to pull you back to the old rhythm. These reminders will help you return to the new one you're choosing. In the end, all of this comes down to a simple invitation, not to become someone else, but to meet yourself more honestly, more kindly, and more completely. Zen doesn't promise a life without storms. It teaches you how to discover the unshakable place inside you that can face them. So as this video closes, don't rush away. Take one more slow breath. Feel your body wherever it is. And ask yourself quietly, what if peace isn't something I chase, but something I finally allow?